Hello everybody, this is Jerry Pike and this is Relationships Part 2. And if you haven't seen the Part 1, I do suggest you look at it first because we're going to dive straight into something that won't quite make sense otherwise. So do stop now and look at Part 1 if you haven't done so already. Hopefully they've gone away and we just left it with those who've seen Part 1, and you will know that what we're on about is looking at parenting as something that life, creation, the universe uses in a very central way as its mechanism for life to progress. And therefore it's probably got relevance to us in how we lead our lives. And this is trying to show you some examples of how we could think about parenting across different aspects, from how we bring up children, which is the one we know so well, to how the universe might be parenting us, and then to reflect into the idea that we as spiritual entities of some kind have a deeper side that often gets completely ignored because of the exigencies of life or the things we end up becoming good at, taking priority in our lives. And we might never discover what that inner calling, that greater belief, that more naturalized focus that would really suit our lives. So this is going to look at the idea of parenting our deeper self, our true self. And this is trying to give you examples, but I think the important thing is that you get the vitamin of it and can then explore it for yourself rather than I'm coming up with set answers for anything. And just a couple of points I need to make before we begin. And one thing is that I have not had any children. And I'm sure some of you who do are going to feel that I'm just taking the best side of parenting and only talking about that. Because bringing up children is hard work. It's 24 hours a day, every day of your life while they're growing up. And it can be really, really demanding and very frustrating at times. And I admit I'm not looking at the day-to-day aspects of parenting children, but we are looking at what on earth parenting is about and trying to see it for its great qualities and what it is trying to achieve. So yes, this is more the high level of it, and I'm not wishing to sort of ignore really how great the task is for our parents of today. And the second side of it is that when we look at how creation, the universe might be parenting us, there are clearly things in life that are very unfortunate, ugly, unpleasant. You know, the concept of survival of the fittest and dog eat dog, or even the idea of carnivores having to kill other animals in order to kind of get your weekly food. Now, so this is looking at the best of what parenting can be, and we're not necessarily going to open up the ugly side of life, which I think is there for a purpose, by the way. It is actually a kind of perhaps a parental type plan for us, but that's a whole other story. So again, this is really trying to get at the best of what parenting can be. So let's make a start and open up a few areas to kind of help you get your mind around it. So here we are, and a bit of I'm not sure who likes tables and boxes, but anyway, this is just to kind of give you an aid to follow what's going on. So we're going to look at the parenting through three examples of how what it calls for to be a parent. And we're going to look at it from the aspect of how we treat our children, and then secondly, how the universe might be raising us as its protege for some reason. And then finally, how we might use parenting in our own lives towards that which is deeper within that may not see the light of day if we don't give it the right kind of encouragement and help. So let's take a look. And the first one I'm going to start off with is to look at the area of provision or provides. So part of being a parent means providing for that which you're looking after. So when it comes to children, well, that is pretty obvious. So you've got things like needing to give them food and buy them clothes and, look after them, make sure they don't come to any harm, keep them from danger. And then also we educate them to make sure they can improve and understand what's going on in the world around them. And we look after them if they get sick or unhealthy. We're there to provide for them and help them recover. So it's very clear that the parent looking after children provides things that the child badly needs, but they can't provide it for itself. So that's the first area, pretty obvious, I think. And what could that mean then in terms of how the universe provides for us? And you might say, well, this is all come about by whatever means, but really we are looking at we are assuming an amazingly intelligent universe, and therefore it might be by planning rather than, oh, it just fell together. So let's take a look at what this could be. So first of all, you've got your body, and it's this amazing thing in terms of what it can do, and it really enables us to have a bit of a life. I mean, imagine if you were born a plant, you would have so much restriction in terms of what you're able to do. And as we discussed in the first video, plants don't parent the seeds that they produce, but we do, and we have this great range of possibility. And not only that, we're given a mind, so we can actually assimilate it and work things out and cause things to be because of the way our mind can begin to grasp what's going on. It's an amazing ability. And within that, we have feelings that are this sort of extra layer of persuasion and intelligence into our life. I mean, imagine having your feelings taken out. We'd just be robots, wouldn't we? So this really provides for us a great richness in our experience of life. And then the idea that if we damage ourselves, get ill in some way, the body is constantly trying to bring it back to how it should be. So the heavy lifting, as it were, is done by creation in terms of trying to heal us when it can. And then there's the aspect that you may not see it as provision, but what is this thing that we do called sleep? It's 1/3 of our life practically. And you must say that there's an awful lot of wear and tear going on. If, imagine you had to, every time you drove your car for 16 hours, you had to lay it up for 18 hours of working to repair it. And that's the sort of thing that happens to us. So something's got our welfare in mind and make sure we get put to sleep so that the repair cycle can go on. So it's all part of the provision that life has given us in order to give us a good experience down here, at least from the standpoint of being provided for. So that's two areas. Now, when we take this to looking inside ourselves, what kind of things could we say, well, we could act like a better parent? Well, what we've got is, first of all, you need to create time for this. I mean, it's so easy to end up having a busy life or things that aren't right in your life and you're constantly focusing on them. But you need to make time to give consideration to this, because life can overwhelm you from all that's going on outside of you when you're really trying to make time for what's going on inside of you. So finding that conscious decision to give it time. And then I've got two there, food and air. And in a way, the air is trying to say about what nourishes us. I'm sort of going it the wrong way around. But, it's what nourishes you. So, you might sort of have some sort of love of creativity, but your life is an accountant. And if you start being creative inside accountancy, it's against the law. So, you need to feed it, explore that creativity in your life in some way, and don't let what you actually do in your world be the thing that governs your thinking. So when I come to say food and don't feed it the wrong ideas, you've got to realize that your deep self, what you actually are inside, may not be anything like what your life has turned out to be because of your upbringing, the experiences, what you were capable of, unfortunate things that happened to you, You might be a raging success financially, or you might be broke and unable to get a job. But all these things, that what your life has become, should not necessarily be the things you feed yourself. You need to kind of almost back off letting the external consequences of the life you have led figure in what you feel your true self is up to. So hence, that's why it's in there as be careful what you feed yourself, not to feed yourself the wrong things, which is to do with what your life has become and may not be what you actually are inside. Then I put belief. And this is really saying, this is about you and what you actually are, not what life has allowed you to, what has become obvious from your life so far. So search for that belief, what your belief actually is, and avoid established beliefs that you've been educated to. Try and find your own one. Even if it's crude and clumsy, it's a place to start. And also you need to value this. You need to realize that this is probably more important to you than money, even though money might seem the most important thing in the world to you at the moment. But really, if you had that money, then what would be important to you? And you've got to realize you've got something that is intrinsically, intimately of importance to you. And can you become conscious of it? And learning to love it, or feeling the love towards it, is a very good place to start. So there's a bit my shot at the things that could represent providing for that deep life in you that may be not starving, but just malnourished, and hardly you hear a peep out of it because it's not getting any warming signs for it to grow and appear. So that's the first one, to be provided for. Now, the next one is to do about giving opportunity to that which you're looking after. So when you're picking up children, you need to show them things. You need to show them their toys, and you need to show them where they can play, and you need to show them where they've got to be careful and not go there. Like don't fiddle around with a fire extinguisher in the kitchen or something. And so the more we show them, the more they start to get the picture. And then hopefully you'll be able to take them places, like you'll take them to the beach or the woods or the city or all these different things, so they start to absorb and get a sense of this place. And you would explain things to them and name things and, show things, give an idea of how things work. And so you're starting that education process so that they can better understand and get a grasp of this world around them. And then you might notice their talents. They might have this sort of inclination towards music. And so you go out and get them a musical instrument. Or they might seem to like drawing, and then you get them a paint box. And things like this, which is not trying to tell them what to do, but it's assisting what seems to be in them and is trying to get expressed. And then finally I put not over controlling, which is that sense that, yes, children do need controlling. You must make sure they don't stick their hand in the fire and so on, but not to overdo it so that they feel that they got this enthusiasm to explore and really a willingness to run with what turns up in them. So it's just a caution about how much control can, whilst necessary in some ways, can dampen what the child could become. So that gives you a sense of what it's like for the child. Now, what would we say where the universe gives us opportunity? Well, what we've got is we've got this amazing planet. They could have just given us, a couple of 100 miles to play around with, but we get this enormous planet to play around with, and it's incredibly varied. It's not all kind of countryside somewhere. It can be mountains, it can be deserts, it can be the Arctic, it's the oceans. It's just never ending if you wanted to explore the planet, and the range of environments and things you can meet that will give you a different kind of experience. And another way it gives us opportunity is that we're forever being refreshed into a new day. So we almost get a clean start upon our day. And then you get the year and how we all go through different seasons, and we start again with that season we had last year. And so it's a kind of refreshment process by going through, the different cycles of the year. And it even turns up in the way that, it's very hard to remember what you thought 10 minutes ago, or you might have difficulty remembering what you did yesterday. So in a sense, we're always kept a bit vacant of all these things that we could remember, so that we are open and ready to absorb the next experience that we're in. So this is all part of the planning to keep us really getting quite a varied diet. Now what have I got here? Provides a massive range. Well, think about the range we're given to deal with. I mean, when you're a baby, you try to limit the range. So you make sure they don't get too cold or too hot. You make sure they don't come in contact with something that's too sharp or too abrasive. And yet, when the adult human, if you think about what we've been given, we can get to things that are absolutely freezing, to things that are boiling hot like lava. We can see vast expanses. We can feel caught up in a tiny little confined box. I mean, we're given incredible range. We can be a devil or we can be a saint. And this is almost saying that the trust that the universe puts in us to cope with that. I mean, you can say we haven't coped, we've screwed up in a lot of cases, but we've also succeeded in so many others. And it's a mark of the capability that's being offered to us, that we have this enormous range with which to explore our lives. And then I put motivates. So you've got to think that a lot of our life is done by the fact that we end up getting interested in things and want to follow it up, or we get desires and really need to respond to them. And this kind of keeps us moving. And you get compulsions like, you try sitting around for a week doing nothing. You will really want to get up and do something. And then we've got to eat, and then we want company. And all these things motivate us to get up and want to engage in some fashion or another. And, you compare it to, say, a snail. I don't know what motivates a snail, but it's clearly limited in the things it can engage in by the nature of its life. But we really have a great range of possibilities about what we get caught by and what we want to follow up on, that makes us really quite busy as a species because of all the things that catch our mind and make us want to explore it further. And then I've got in there free will, because we tend to take this a bit for granted and think it's just for going shopping and choosing which shop we go to. But free will runs very deep, and you could throw a dice and help your free will decide whether you're going to travel the world if you get an even number, or you're going to learn a musical instrument if you get an odd number. And okay, that's an artificial idea where free will is concerned, but really you can choose and you can follow it up and you can make it happen. And this is absolutely amazing compared to things that even the animals tend to be just responding within their programming, but we can exercise our lives outside of that programming, and that's a pretty major one. That gives you a sense of what it could be like in terms of how the universe is giving us opportunity to grow and develop and find out what we could be. So what would this now be in terms of our deeper selves? So the nature of a lot of these are finding ways to spend time contemplating what that deep life inside you might be to do with. So wondering is one area where you start turning over things like wondering whether it's something to do with the arts that really moves your life, or maybe it's something to do with healing and well-being in others, or is it perhaps to do with community and the way people could be together. Let your mind explore different ideas and realms that see what kind of starts to resonate in you. And also in doing so, you might find things that in an unexpected way catch you. Like I was kind of caught by politics, and I'm not really into the politics thing, but I realized it's something to do with how people can be together that really interests my life. So it started out in a kind of conventional way, but when I sort of probed a bit deeper, I saw that it did have a place in my life at a deeper level. And this thing of plays, really, you can get caught out by wanting to get to an answer. And really a good way, and it's kind of like the universe has given us this mechanism, where you just happily play with things in your mind, even get a bit ridiculous, make yourself laugh about it. Because inside of that, you're liable to stumble across something that's going to be relevant. And it is really quite a nice way of going on. Admittedly, the thing with play is that you can say, well, it doesn't lead to anything accountable. But nevertheless, it's a great place to start. So be happy to play with things in your mind, to explore what lights up your life and where it could have greater meaning that you're still to discover. We've got educates. So for example, if you are finding yourself caught by something, go off and investigate it further, find out about it, take yourself to places that are to do with it. And again, noticing what starts to stand out for you in it, because it may not be the conventional wisdom that is really appealing to you. It might be some facet of it that as you start to look in it becomes clearer by getting more familiar with the territory. And finally, freeze to sidestep your programming. See, you could argue that most of what we do is really because of what's being put in there by our life to date. And you need to find ways or be prepared to sidestep that programming. So it could be that you just decide to take yourself off somewhere that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Or you decide to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning in the summer because you want to watch the sunrise. And it's giving yourself that allowance to not be your normal self when something occurs to you, and take a bit of the dare that you'll follow something up that you wouldn't have done before. And not that that's saying it will be the right thing or not. It's like evaluating it as you go along to see what has stuck in your mind about it. And this is all about giving it extra possibility and opportunity to show itself, which your life to date, if you just kept replaying that, may not ever let it see the light of day in terms of aspects of what is actually inside of you. So that covers about giving things opportunity. Now, the third area, I was wondering about this, and I thought I would call it to do with giving patience, which is the sense that any good parent has to be prepared to give things time, because it won't happen inside the schedule you would like. So when it comes to children, and you know it's going to take a long time, and you know you aren't going to get the results you wanted, and then you can have hopes and expectations for your children, but that's what they've got to be. You can't force them on them. I mean, some people do force them on their children, and sometimes it even works, but really I don't think that is the best of parenting. The best of parenting is when the child decides that's what they want for themselves, maybe influenced by the parents, but it is still their own decision inside of it. And allows results to come when they're ready, because you've got to let the child show what it's interested in the main. That is a good way to go about it. I mean, we tend to teach our children reading, writing and arithmetic whether they want to learn it or not. But really that kind of more naturalized side of the child is letting it show things when it's ready, and facilitating that in how you're addressed to them as a parent. And then, of course, you can guide them when needed, giving them advice, bringing them something that they need, and not necessarily putting some demand upon them to be pleased or to even make use of it, but it makes it available to them. And so you're offering things without really expecting a return. And then I think also an aspect of being patient is the idea of loving what they can be or might become. And even if it turns out that that's not the direction they're going in, but you love that spirit in them that's going to explore what their life can be. And you hold it there more as a love affair rather than it's some kind of necessity in your mind. So that's all in and around playing with the idea of being patient with your children. Now, what could that mean in terms of the universe and our lives? Well, in a similar way, it starts with the fact that the universe doesn't seem to put demand on us. It just seems to wait for us to get our act together in whatever way that is. And then it doesn't actually tell us what to do, but it does persuade us in terms of needing company or wanting to do something fulfilling or having a love of nature. And so this is the gentle way of nurturing us forward. And again, in the sense that the universe doesn't sort of put these strong requirements upon us, but it does give us endless consequences. So if we love our food too much and don't like exercising, we get fat. And then on the other hand, if we do exercise and we cut down our food, we get thinner and stronger. And, the consequences are everywhere, and it's for us to explore them, but it's not as if the universe forces them on us. It's for us to get involved and find out what happens. And then this thing I've called stage manager, you see, it doesn't just leave us as one thing. We don't come as a baby and stay as a baby. We get kind of carried through life from the baby to the adult years and then into old age. And then, for example, we have to sort of work out how we're going to be in all those, and it's different requirements for different ages. And rather than sort of push us around, as it were, it sets things in place. Like at puberty, you're going to start getting interested in the sort of opposite sex. And, the time has come. And there's certain timings put in place for how we will affect our lives. And therefore, we will start to explore things a bit differently because of it. And then finally, I put the way that the universe is actually incredibly constant. I mean, you might feel, well, that's just the way it is. But how about that constancy has been built in? Because, okay, this might sound a sort of poor example, but in your dreams, things aren't constant. They keep switching and changing. And if you ever go into things like astral traveling, things can change very easily. But here in this world, things are incredibly predictable in a lot of ways, even though there's an element in it, like ourselves, that can appear to be very unclear how we're going to respond. But really, from the universe's point of view, it gives us a very stable platform, maybe an overwhelming and massive platform, but nevertheless, it is consistent. So that gives you some sense of how the universe is providing for us and just letting us be in how we get on with it. So finally, when it comes to ourselves and how we're going to look into our own life, then a few suggestions is that in that sense of being patient, you need to find ways where you could think about it every day. Something small every day would be far better than taking yourself on holiday for a week once a year to think about it. Something a little bit every day, and something can grow because of it. And then I put flowering, and it's the sense that for a flower to appear, you've got to grow the plant first. And I think there is a flowering in everybody. I mean, this is what your true self is about. It's where you will naturally flower. But the journey to it in your life might be one of thinking you found something, and really you've just got a bit of the plant. In that, when I was in my 20s, I got a job that was a bit I had jobs that were a bit technical, and then one of them was, this has more writing involved. And I thought I'm pretty lousy at writing, but I'll go for it because maybe that would be better for me to learn some writing. And I did get better at writing. And then I realized from the deeper side of myself that I was very interested in communication, to the point that I'm doing these videos trying to communicate to you now. But it started off with something like writing and then communication. And this is all part of the plant, which there is still a flower to appear from it. In a sense, I'm still looking for the flower of what this is about, but it feels like I'm on the right track with something that is going to have, hopefully, some significance to others. And that is part of the flowering, I think, but realizing it might take various steps along the way to get to that. And then mutuality is this sense that you're not talking about becoming something that you're not. This is about who you actually are and would like to be. And there is a deep mutuality in there, even though there's this strange apparent sense of you're exploring something that you haven't got yet from this life that's full of the fashioning of what life has thrown at you, and you're trying to sidestep that. So it's a slight double-edged sword, but really there's this incredible intimacy that you're seeking to grow and foster in terms of what your true self is actually about. And then I put thrill, because really it should be quite exciting to try and explore this, not a drudgery, not work you don't want to do. You should have a kind of quiet excitement about it, because that really is an encouragement for something to appear, and it's appropriate. It should be an exciting part of your life to discover what it is that's really going on inside of you that may not have hit your conscious mind yet. And then finally, neutrality, because you've got to realize that where you've got to in your life to date is a lot to do with the experiences you were subject to, the lot you were given in life in the first place. And you need to be able to look at it without prejudice, without saying it's definitely for you or it's definitely not. You just look at it a bit in a kind of observer fashion to then see if there is something in it that's suitable for you. Or maybe you say, well, I've just got stuck with this, and here I am spending my days picking up litter for the council, which is actually a very good job, isn't it? But, don't let that define, what your deeper life might be saying. So to be a bit neutral about it is a good way to be. So that covers all the areas, and it's not trying to be too definitive about it. It's really trying to spark you into your own thinking about this. And really, if there's one thing to take away from this, it's starting your own thoughts using this vitamin of the idea to see if it stacks up. So that's been quite a long run, but it's the germ of the idea that's important. And to realize that, we live in a world that sort of, if it can, it likes to control what's going to happen. The advertiser wants to guarantee it gets a result from the advert it puts out. But so much of life is not like that. And it's really perhaps in an open-ended state of appearance and exploration. And parenting is one of those soft stabilities that perhaps might be the most fruitful in terms of taking something that's in your charge that you can't control and determine, absolutely, but you can help it to become what it actually is. And that might be the great virtue of what parenting is bringing to your life, and can cause something to appear as it should be, rather than coming from some conception that you had in your life that isn't actually doing justice to it. So parenting is this great open-ended support and is worth giving more time in your consideration, I think.